Since the completion of the first Levittown in 1951, many Americans have become fixated on suburbs as the pinnacle of the American dream. But from the beginning, car-centric suburban development has furthered many social and economic injustices, including housing segregation and a lack of easy access to many goods and services. Fortunately, there are many steps communities and governments can take to minimize and reverse the effects of suburban sprawl and car dependency. The Levitt towns, designed by William Levitt, are some of, if not the first examples of mass-produced American-style suburban development. These communities featured now typical cul-de-sac design, favoring car traffic over other modes of transportation, with wide streets and no sidewalks. These design choices were, in part, due to the fact that one of the primary factors in the success of the Levitt towns was the post-war government subsidization of cars and roadways. Unfortunately, car-centric design was not the only problem with the Levitt towns. William Levitt explicitly prevented ethnic, racial, and religious minorities from purchasing properties in his communities, an extension of the homeowners' loan corporation's racist redlining practices. Many other suburban communities were inspired by the Levitt towns, adopting similar neighborhood designs and discriminatory community guidelines in accordance with the homeowners' loan corporation's practices. The effects of discriminatory and segregationist American housing and lending practices can be seen in many aspects of modern day-to-day life. Spatial supermarket redlining, a term used to describe how chain supermarkets and other retailers tend to avoid locating stores in certain neighborhoods, is one of these modern-day effects. Spatial supermarket redlining is common across much of the United States. In a very unscientific bout of research, using redlining information from Mapping Inequality and modern-day grocery store locations from Google Maps, I found that in Jacksonville, neither Publix nor Harvey's, two major Floridian grocery store chains, had stores in communities that the Homeowners Loan Corporation deemed red in 1936. While I don't think either company used 86-year-old Hulk maps to plan where they were going to build their stores, the fact that no major grocer has open locations in redline communities goes to show that the economic and social impacts of the Hulk's practices exist to this day. So what does the history of American suburbanism and redlining have to do with car dependency? For starters, as stated previously, modern American-style suburban communities found much of their success from their car centricity. The appeal of the personal automobile came from a post-war economic boom and a desire for further freedoms, factors that play into America's car culture to this day. These desires, expansive suburbanism, and the government's promotion of car ownership and driving, which has its own separate problematic history, paved the way for the car dependency crisis Americans now have to live with. Additionally, spatial supermarket redlining directly affects how far members of different communities have to travel to meet their needs. This means that those excluded from early forms of suburbanism now have disproportionately long commutes to find employment, groceries, healthcare, education, recreational spaces, and other regular destinations. The effects of suburbanism and car dependency are complex, intertwined, and deeply rooted in American culture. Any advocacy for solutions that fails to consider the local factors that have historically caused and promoted car dependency in a given region, including several that I have not mentioned, is doomed to fail. However, there are many options that governments and communities have to choose from and evaluate that can reduce and reverse the effects of suburbanism and car dependency. Yes, you read that right. I am going to try and get you to care about one of the most boring topics known to man. Zoning and urban design regulations can be some of the biggest hindrances in the fight against car dependency. From regulating how wide roads have to be to the size of parking lots to where certain kinds of structures can be located, local governments play a huge role in how and when people use cars. Obviously, zoning and urban design regulations often do a lot of good. For example, preventing heavy polluters from impacting residences or commercial businesses. However, in many cases, zoning, especially zoning related to housing or car usage, is based on the same systemic failures that surround suburbanism and car dependency in the first place. The most glaring example of this is with the regulation of parking lot size. Many cities mandate a certain number of parking spaces be allotted for buildings of a given size or grade of use. These requirements can clog up prime downtown real estate in the name of promoting and enabling car dependency. By removing the requirements for many of these parking lots, cities can promote the growth and development of many retail and residential spaces. Additionally, zoning laws often prevent retail businesses, including grocery stores, from operating within neighborhoods. This deepens the issue of modern neighborhoods lacking pedestrian-friendly design by preventing regular destinations from being built within walking distance of people's homes, in turn de-incentivizing pedestrian-friendly design in the first place due to a legally mandated lack of walking demand. Once your city allows densely built, mixed-use communities, or if you live in some cool hipster town where they were never illegal in the first place, it's important to promote them to people accustomed to car-centricity and work on making them accessible to as many people as possible. Side note, some of these communities are built as a form of placemaking and corporate gentrification to rip up established neighborhoods of marginalized communities in favor of predominantly white, wealthy, urbanist utopias. To make a long story short, don't do that please. The ending of car dependency does not need to come at the expense of communities that, as we have established, are not to blame for the crisis. Okay, as I was saying, building walkable communities is not important if the only people who get to live in them are people who could afford to just move to France and live out their urbanist fantasy anyway. They need to be a part of a mass movement at the scale of the much hated suburban communities of today to allow as many people as possible a way out from the car dependency crisis. In my opinion, there is nothing quite like a good public transportation system. In the fight against car dependency, this is doubly true. When trying to get people off the road, you have to give them a compelling alternative. You must create a public transportation system in which its benefits not only outweigh its detriments when compared to car travel, but its perceived detriments from the average car user. This means providing reliable, frequent, fast, comfortable, accessible, convenient, affordable, and safe service that gets someone from close to where they are to near where they need to go. That sounds pretty unattainable for most cities and regions in the United States, doesn't it? Too expensive or hard to maintain? Well, it doesn't have to be. Many cities around the world, especially in India, China, and Latin America, have built well-used, high-quality public transportation systems in just the last 20 years. These systems are often built for dramatically less than comparable systems in North America, and it's not just because of labor costs. If other countries can build these types of high-quality transit systems, I'm certain that, with enough planning and advocacy, we can do it here too. While the history of car dependency and suburbanism in the United States is deeply problematic, and there are many pieces in the puzzle that is reducing and reversing their effects, through advocacy, anyone can work to build a more equitable, less car-centric future for everyone. While, as this is an opinion piece, I think my list of solutions includes only the best options, there are many other solutions that can, have, and will work in different communities, cities, and regions. Additionally, it's important for those in charge of ending these crises to listen to the wants and concerns of the specific people they serve. There's no perfect solution that works all of the time, and the reason for that is that different groups and communities have different needs. Overall, it's important for us to keep advocating for and working towards a society with better and more accessible housing and transportation options for all of its members. For now, this has been Orchid Watkins, writer and editor for nFALCON.